so happy to be here with you. This is actually the first opportunity that I've had to address Affirmation's membership in person, like all of it. And I've been president since January, and so much has happened in Affirmation. I've had the privilege of attending conferences around the world. I got to go to San Francisco and open up a new chapter with the members there. I got to attend a conference in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, and then I just kind of recently got back from London where we held a conference. So every time I attend the conferences, I have so many feelings come up for me, including this conference, because I get to hear stories. And I get to hear stories of our LGBTQ members and their allies and their friends and their families. And I'm always just left with a sense of awe and humility at the fact that these people are the most self-aware, intelligent, beautiful human beings that I know. 5 years ago, I attended my first conference. It was only like 8 months after my spinal cord injury. And I was asked to play a flute number at a conference because the flutist that was going to play, suddenly couldn't. So I was like, sure. I was a little bit concerned about attending because I had heard several years ago that Affirmation was kind of like a church bashing group. It was kind of like North Star's evil stepsister kind of a thing. And so I had just barely come out. It had been like a year because I came out the same year that I broke my neck. It was a big year for me. And so I was in a place, like a very vulnerable space, but I was like, yeah, I'll just go play, I'll go play the flute. And I was asked to also speak about intersectionality as a queer person with a disability and what my experience had been. And so I went to some workshops and I really enjoyed myself and I felt safe, and I could see that there was a space for me to figure out my journey within Affirmation. I felt like I wasn't going to be pushed to the left or to the right in how I decided to live out my faith or not, and how I decided that my sexuality would be expressed or not, identify as a cisgender male, gay male. And so I started participating more. I started, speaking more, doing some workshops. I was a keynote speaker out in Florida once, and I eventually decided to run for Affirmation president last fall. And one of the things that I was so passionate about and that I really wanted to bring to the table was what Francisco mentioned a little bit earlier, which is this idea of radical inclusion. Previously, so Affirmation is a wide umbrella, right? We serve an incredibly diverse group of individuals. I usually tell people who ask what I do or ask what Affirmation is, I say Affirmation is the intersection of anyone who identifies as queer or LGBT on the spectrum, and who identifies as Mormon anywhere on the spectrum. The intersection of those two things and any variation are the people that we serve. And that comes with challenges, because I've watched as some individuals might feel like the life decisions of others are personal challenges to their own life decisions if they're not the same. And especially where we're talking about some of the most personal, beautiful parts of our lives, like who we love and what we believe in, and kind of like the framework under which we operate, it's easy for this to get very emotional and very difficult. True belonging is the spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone in the wilderness. True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. And we know that about authenticity and belonging. Thank you. Thank you, Brene. And so this is a little paradoxical, but this is something that we've really worked on as a leadership team and have tried to bring to our board, are the principles of being able to belong to this greater group while also boldly standing in our truth, which is why I can be in the same space with my best friend who is, married to someone of the opposite sex, and she herself is gay, and she is temple attending and the most amazing person that I know and that I love, and we have different life paths, and I know that she's the most interested in me finding my man, and I fully support everything that she's doing with her life. And we sit in the same space and love each other deeply. And that, to me, is true belonging. And that's what we're working to do here in Affirmation. And it's a little bit radical. If we look at what's happening nationally and politically, this isn't really happening. We see a lot of polarization. We see a lot of side-taking and people searching for the sense of belonging by saying, you're different than me, so we can't speak the same language. That would be impossible. So you're over here and I'm over here, and let's fight for what we believe in, but we're not gonna mix. And that's a lonely space to be, and it doesn't work. We're made to connect, and that's where belonging happens. And so that's where Affirmation is going. In terms of where we've been, we've tried to find that space, and we're still trying to find it, and I think we're doing better, and I look forward to continuing to do it better. But we're really trying to change the narrative about what it means to kind of be an LGBTQ Mormon or a former Mormon. I actually had so my spinal cord injury has been probably the most informative thing that has taught me about social change, and especially has taught me about what we're doing in Affirmation in social change. Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change the narrative about what it means to be queer in our own circles, with the church, and then also, with the world. Like, this is a global conversation. So I've spent the last 5 years doing everything that I do with my spinal cord injury, feeling like I'm overcoming this tragedy. Like whatever I achieve, I'm doing it out of a context of kind of like, yeah, I got screwed, my life's hard, and so I'm just gonna like be an inspiration and accomplish hard things, and it's all despite the spinal cord injury. So it's like, I'm strong for a guy in a wheelchair. Or, I'm traveling the world, which is amazing, for a disabled man. And I had this moment. I promise this will all tie in. This is not the anesthesia. But I had a moment when I realized that I'd been tackling all these places in my life. Like, it was hard for me to show up on dates for a while in a wheelchair because I felt embarrassed. I felt, who would want a guy in a wheelchair, right? And so I'd like tackle that, but always with the context of I'm broken. Until just, really, this was only several months ago, that I realized that I'm operating under this really gross, disempowering context of being broken. And I went through this process of saying and realizing that I've called the day that I broke my neck, jokingly with my family, and they don't think it's funny, the day of my death. It's dark, and it's a way for me to kind of like laugh and mourn something that's happened, right? And my little 13-year-old sister turned to me one day, and she said, we were just in the car, and she said, what if that's the day of your rebirth? What if that's the day of your birth? And I was like, aw, that's so cute. And that's not what happened. But it got me thinking, and I realized the only difference between that day being the day of my death or the day of my birth is that I say it was. There's no truth either way. It's not true or false either way. It is only what I say it is. I get to choose the narrative. And that day, I went on this paradigm shift of a journey that lasted like 4 hours while I was at the gym, realizing that nothing is wrong with me. So many of you know this process because you've been on the same thing, where you thought you were broken, and you realized being queer is not a problem. Being trans, being bi, being gay, being lesbian, it's not a problem. There's nothing wrong with you. We've inherited a narrative that tells us something's wrong, and it makes me angry and it breaks my heart that we've ever had to believe anything other than that we're perfect and whole. Changing this narrative has changed my life because I'm no longer a broken human being. And when this happens to me, when I reframed this, I realized that this is what we're trying to do in Affirmation. In a larger context, we have these narratives that we share socially, that we agree on. There's an agreement about what certain things mean. And in society, we agree on it. And so for a long time, we've agreed that being LGBTQ meant a certain thing. It wasn't that long ago, maybe 100 years ago, right, that we agreed that what it meant to be a woman was a very different thing. Women couldn't vote. Ridiculous, right? And then we realized that that narrative didn't serve. It wasn't something that we wanted or we could work with. And so we changed the narrative because we could, right? And this has opened up so much for me, especially in this position as a leader, because I realized that we get to choose exactly what we want to say the experience of being queer is, and we get to decide how we want to change the narrative. We get to share this narrative with the rest of the world, which is how it becomes real, is by talking about it and sharing it. The minute that I realized that I didn't have a problem and I wasn't broken, I didn't have an accident, and that it was the day of my birth, I sent a video to my family saying, let's talk about it this way. I sent all the videos to my friends. I sent them to the people in my life who can keep that alive for me so that they can change their narrative so it becomes real. This is how it works. And this is what we're doing and what we can do. And in the church, we're also trying to change the narrative. We're trying to show up and say, actually, we've had spiritual experiences affirming that who we are is pleasing to God, that we belong in the church, that there's a place for us to worship here. And not as a consolation prize, right? Not as like, even the gay people are here, even the trans people are here. No, there's a space for us because we have something to give that no one else can give. There's no broken context if we say there's no broken context. And so I invite all of us to be bold about saying who we are and not agreeing to those messages that are untrue, that tell us that we're something else, that tell us that we have to overcome something or that we have to fight something. There's nothing to overcome. And we get to say that unapologetically. And this is how the world changes. And I'm out to change the world. And this happens collectively. We have to do it together. And listening to the kids talk about the kind of messages that they hear in their head, that they've inherited from other people. I'm tired of listening to people who've spent their lives seeking this sense of wholeness. And I'm not tired for selfish reasons. I'll listen to it all day long. I'll cry with you all day long. It's because I know that there is a better truth, and we have that truth, that we're whole and perfect, and we just need to get out and share it. And that's my message to you. I love you. I am so thankful that you've supported me and that you're here listening, that you've attended. Thank you for being here. Please continue to participate. If you have a problem with how Affirmation is being run, or if you have feedback, the kind of organization we are, I mean, you are Affirmation. Again, you decide what we are. So stay in contact with us, talk with the leadership, give us your ideas. That's how this runs. You are Affirmation. You decide how this goes and where this goes. So thank you so much for your time. I love you, and I'm humbled to serve with you and call myself your friend. So enjoy the rest of your conference.